The only way I'm going to get caught up on videos is if we do a late night recording session. So let's finally talk about everything I read in August. Hello, book friends. It's Alyssa. Welcome back to the channel. Hello, if you are new. I am trying to catch up on all the videos that I've had planned for the month that got derailed by Booker Prize Bonanza. Just the insanity of trying to keep up with reading the long list for the Booker Prize. The short list is out. It's a fair list, I guess. Let's move on. We can talk about everything again in November when we finally get a winner. If you are following along with the Booker Prize, I'd love to know your thoughts on the short list and who you think should win. That's what I want to know. Otherwise, let's get into this. I'm going to try to not be so loud because I'm hoping that I don't keep Jesus up because he is sleeping, but I probably will be loud. So he may come down and yell at me. Hopefully not. Anyway, so per usual, we will put up my stats from Storygraph. So I'll slide on over here and we will check out the stats and then we'll go through all the books I read. Obviously, I read a lot of Booker books in August, so I'm not going to go into detail about those because there are individual reviews on the channel. There's a whole playlist of them, so if you want to see them, please go ahead and check that out. I'll try to remember to link it. I probably won't remember, but it is what it is. Also, since late night I worked, I'm tired. We are doing this Saul's makeup. This is like an intimate late night, so grab a coffee if it's the morning, grab a beverage of your choice if it's the evening, get cozy, get comfy, let's do it. First off, I read 25 books in August, and that was 7,042 pages. I'm going to say that's actually more like 24 books because one of them I don't think really counts, but Storygraph is counting it. So for continuity with Storygraph stats, it's 25, but I don't believe that's 25. So we're predominantly emotional and reflective, which I think reflects the Booker Prize and the books that they picked. Dark and sad. I guess I read the Booker Prize because it just fits my moods, whether I like the books or not. We're all in the same vibe, so I guess that makes sense for why I follow it. The pacing was mostly medium per usual and evenly split between fast and slow. I find that interesting. I thought there would be more slow books because of Booker, but I guess not. Page count, we are mostly under 300 pages. A lot of the Booker Prize books were under 300, so that doesn't surprise me there. And then, of course, the same kind of a couple over 500, but not really a lot. The less fantasy I read, the shorter my books get, which is probably why I read more books every year. I did read a little bit of nonfiction this month. Not a lot, but a little bit. And then my genres are the same. Obviously, it's literary fiction on top, a little bit of contemporary, a little bit of horror, mystery, and historical. Poor little fantasy got pushed all the way down to the bottom there. It's coming back. It's making a comeback in the month of September, or it's trying to. I don't know. This month isn't going very well for me in general. And then my average star rating, I think this is the worst month I've had. It's a 3.46, which is still not terrible, but I think it is the worst month I've had so far this year. It is what it is. And I'm sorry if I'm not as animated as maybe I normally am. I'm just trying to not wake up my very lovely sleeping partner because he has to work tomorrow. Right when I go to bed, he has to start work. So let's pull up my Bookly per usual, go to August, and look at everything that I read. So we are starting the month off with a Booker book, of course, A Spell of Good Things. Not a favorite, but after reading all of the long list, I think it improved in the ranking for me in the whole mix of books for the long list, but it was not my favorite. I'm not gonna lie. I am curious to read their first book. I've heard a lot of people in my comments have said they didn't like this one, but they loved the other one. Also, a lot of people have loved A Spell of Good Things, but it seems like a lot of people who didn't like this book liked their first book, and the name is escaping me, so editing Alyssa will probably put it on the screen for me, but I'm forgetting what it is at this exact moment. But yeah, individual review for this. We're going to move on. Earth Eaters by Dolores Reyes is probably the only Women in Translation book I read for Women in Translation Month, or Wit Month, as everybody's calling it, which I don't... Is that what we call it? Is that really what we call it? Or did someone just decide that we're going to, instead of saying Women in Translation, just say Wit? I know that's the acronym, but I didn't know that we like pronounce the acronym. Anyway, you learn something new every day. This is translated from Spanish. The author's from Argentina. This is the story of a girl who basically can like eat earth, and she can then sense the lives of the people in that earth. So it's a story about missing people, about uh, children and women who are taken and forgotten and lost, and the families they're left behind. And it is a beautiful book, and it's a book that I wish I could read in Spanish, but I can't. I can barely even like order food for myself in Spanish, because apparently this was a difficult book to translate, because it is so colloquially written in Argentine Spanish that it was like it just was difficult to translate. And it would be lovely to be able to read it and understand it in its purest form, but I don't see that being something that I will ever be able to accomplish. But perhaps, I don't know, I still have some neuroplasticity. Perhaps I can learn Spanish. Old God's Time by Sebastian Barry I did really love, and I'm sad that it's not on the short list, but I'm not surprised that it's not on the short list. I think this is a very well-written book. It's a very good book. Sebastian Barry is very well established as an author, but I don't know if this particular book was for everybody, but I did really enjoy it. Full review, you can look at it. Same with This Other Eden by Paul Harding. This is on the short list. I kind of assumed the judges would put it there. It would not be on my short list, but I kind of get why it is there. But not my favorite. Just because you wrote it on Post-its doesn't mean that it has merit. But anyway, that's not a flex. But also on the short list is Western Lane. Oh, it's funny how like early I read a big chunk of the short list. Western Lane. This is really a very quiet book, a very aptly described quiet book. Lots of squash. It seems weird that it's on the short list, but it's not a bad book. Not a bad book at all. If I Survive You is actually just really a collection of short stories. Not my favorite from this grouping of books. This is also a shortlisted Booker book. I don't know. I don't think it'll make it. I don't think it's gonna win the Booker, but I mean, it's nice to see it there. I'm interested to see what Jonathan Escoffery does next. This is his debut, and I'm very curious to see what he would do with a long form novel. But yeah, you can see my whole review on that one. The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue is so good. I love this book. This book handles a couple of very sensitive topics very well. It is also kind of a second chance romance. It's set in Ireland. It talks about unwanted pregnancies, messy relationships, affairs, and just kind of growing up and figuring yourself out and friendship. It's such a good book. Like, it's just a good book. It Oh, it's yes. Thank you to the publisher for sending me this, because this was fantastic. When the Reckoning Comes by Latanya McQueen. This is sort of like a southerny kind of maybe gothic horror. I guess you could categorize it as that. And it's basically about some childhood friends and this plantation down in the south where they had an incident happen when they were kids, and then they end up kind of all meeting back there as adults, when the one friend who is white, and she has two friends that are black, and they are invited to her wedding, the white lady's wedding, and she's having it at this plantation, and that plantation is like super creepy, and it's almost like a Jordan Peele movie where this plantation has been like revamped and almost turned into some sort of reenactment of antebellum South, and it's creepy and unsettling and poignant and really well done. I really like this. Pearl by Sean Hughes, who is not an Irish author. Oh, I'm such a dingus. But there is a review for this, and just watch me put my foot in my mouth right at the end. But anyway, there were a bunch of Irish authors on the long list for the Booker Prize, and I made a mistake. Anyway, I love this book. It's about mothers and daughters and grief and all the things that I just eat up. And I'm sad it's not on the short list. I know this was not a fan favorite across the board. Certain people really loved it. Other people really hated it. But I loved it so much. I loved it so much. I wish it had been shortlisted. Anyway, you can see my full review. I should just stop saying that. all these Booker books. Go look at the reviews if you want more. In Ascension, I am so glad this was not on the short list. I was going to be mad if it was because I really disliked this book. Sometimes I feel like literary sci-fi can be fantastic, and then a lot of the times I feel like it just misses the mark because it doesn't know how to balance. I feel like somebody like Emily St. John Mandel can do it really well. She strikes the right balance between fantasy, I should say sci-fi, and literary fiction. So it really fits nicely, and I guess what you would call speculative fiction. This was just, it was too long, it was too tedious. It was like trying too hard in some areas to be like really I didn't like it. I'm not rehashing all this. Go look at the review, but I did not like this. And there's been some other really great reviews of this. I feel like the Disco King did a fantastic review of this, so you can check his out too. That was a beautiful review, and I think summarized my thoughts when I finished this even better than I could have. This book, please read this book. Monsters, A Fan's Dilemma by Claire Dederer, collection of essays where the author is attempting to grapple with this question we talk about all the time here in like the bookish social medias, this idea of separating the art from the artist. Like, can you do it? How do you do it? Does it depend on what the creator did? What did the artist do? When did they do it? Are they dead or alive? When did you find out about it? Did you find out about what they did after you consumed whatever you consumed their art, or before? How do you handle all of that? And it's written from the lens. She's a movie reviewer or critic, and she's talking about like Roman Polanski and Woody Allen and people like that. And how do you grapple with things that they've done and also the art that they've made? And then does one tarnish the other or not? Across the board, it becomes a very nuanced discussion. For each individual, it may be black or white, but on like the greater whole, it is a very nuanced discussion. I thought this was really, really well done. But then it also leads into things about just art and being a creative and the ease of being a creative, how it may be a little easier for men, especially in heterosexual relationships where there are children, than for women. And it made me think about A Room of One's Own. And they were such good, so good. Please read this. Just pick it up, read it. Amazing. How to Build a Boat, Elaine Feeney, did not make the short list. Thank God. I did not like this book, and I do think that the ending was the strongestly. You critique people's book writing and you say strongestly. I do feel like the ending had the strongest writing. And I do feel like our main character, it should have just been him. We shouldn't have had the two teachers. You can look at my review if you want. I don't know how it even got longlisted, frankly. And I don't know why KD loves it so much. I did not love it. I really tried, but I did not love it. The Warden. So I have been collecting Anthony Trollops for a very long time. It is nearly Victober. I read my first Trollope and I DNF'd it. I literally made it halfway through. I did not care. I did not care about these people. I did not care about anything. I thought we were supposed to like Trollope because he's kind of like gossipy, and I just did not care. And I don't know if I tried to enter Trollope at the wrong point with the Warden. Should I have gone somewhere else? For people who are read a lot of Victorian literature, for people who know Trollope really well, did I go the wrong way? Where do I go? I'm willing to give him one more shot. And then if not, I will just get rid of my Trollops because I can't have them taking up space on my shelves. There's so many of them. If I hate him, I just need to move on. I read the Jasmin Air with Rogers Reads, and he was pretty like middle of the road fine with it, and I absolutely did not like this. I just felt like it was, I don't know, I just didn't like it. It wasn't interesting. It was a little cliche. It was not like, well, I don't know. It just wasn't well rounded. And I know this is the debut. I feel like it's supposed to have these like Egyptian elements to it and like ancient Egypt sort of elements. And those just didn't feel, they kind of felt a little forced. Like the romance wasn't even believable. It was, I didn't like it. I did enjoy All the Little Bird Hearts, another long listed book that did not get shortlisted, but I really enjoyed it. I love the perspective of having our narrator be someone on the spectrum. I loved them explaining how they see the world. I love seeing how other brains think and um, process the world around them. So it's always nice to see somebody else's way of looking at the world, especially when you're like neurodivergent, because it just makes me feel a little bit better about where I am in the uterus in the universe. I thought this was really well done. I don't know. I'm giving you a whole nother review. You can go watch it. I'm gonna give this to you straight. I read "I Am Homeless If This Is Not My Home" by Lori Moore, and I remember absolutely loving it. I could not at this exact moment tell you what this book was about, but I remember really liking it. And I remember like marking up so many fantastic, just beautifully worded sentences and just poignant moments. It's the middle of the night and it's been a while. It's been a while. So I don't remember all the details, but I remember this being kind of trippy and poetic and beautiful and sort of about like siblings and grief and loss, and then also some other things. And you're going back and forth like timeline stuff. But the thing I really remember about this is how like invested I was while I was reading it and how many like passages I marked because the writing was just so stunning, and I'm like embarrassed that I can't recall more things to actually like talk to you about this book, because I just remember being so enthralled while reading it and like I need to read more Lori Moore. So I'm definitely gonna have to go back to this one and do another like read and just like maybe skim through all of my like annotations, because I feel like it's a shame that my like exhausted, just worn down brain can't recall more from this experience other than just how much I enjoyed it. I walked away with a vibe from this and I just loved it. I just wish my brain worked. I read another T. King Fisher, her newest, which is Thorn Hedge. And this is a retelling of sort of Sleeping Beauty, but more from the other side of the story, not from Sleeping Beauty. It's kind of got changelings and magic and like magical toads and a prince and tower, and it is whimsical and feminist and turned on its head the way that T. Kingfisher does so well. Such a lovely little break of a book. It's a little novella. It's not very long. Highly recommend if you just want a little bit of like light, whimsical reading. Loved this. The Bee Sting by Paul Murray, shortlisted. I hope it wins. It's so good. I did really like it. I'm still grappling with the ending of this one, and I'm loving seeing people's comments come in on that review, because everyone's telling me what they think happened at the end of the book, and it's just so nice to see that discourse. But I still truly feel like, though I really liked the book and I liked the ending, like in its little bracket, and I liked everything before that in its own little bracket, I still don't know if they go together, because it was just such a jarring switch for me from like the main text to that ending. But I don't dislike either of them separately. It's just I have so many complex feelings on this book. Very well done. Loved it. Night's Edge by Liz Karen. This was recommended to me by CJ Lead when we interviewed her for the podcast, tbrlowdown.com. Go there, check it out, podcast. And this is about and I believe there might be another one. I feel like CJ mentioned either this author has another book coming out or there's another book in series with this one, but it's about a mother and daughter. It is a interesting look at the vampire myth and about some codependence and a little bit of abuse. It is really interesting. You're in this world where you kind of get like a genetic disease when you get converted into a vampire, and you end up being tested for this. And there are places where you can be sent if you get tested and they find out that you have this component in your blood that makes you a vampire. And there's mystery around those places on whether or not they're really there to help you, or if they're there to sort of exterminate possibly, or incarcerate these vampires. There's all very codependent and frankly abusive relationship between mother and daughter, but it's abusive in its codependence, and it's really interesting. Like when you go in this world, when you go into stores, you have to like get your finger pricked or whatever, so they can check to see if you have this mutation, so that you can't go into society, basically. Your society is shutting down and weeding out these people. So there's this whole underbelly of vampires that are all trying to find a place in the world. And it's really well done. I really loved it. I am so upset. So I I listened to Brutes by Dizzy Tate, and I was so excited to read this book. And I made the mistake of reading this, like probably like deep into my long list read for Booker. And I don't know. I don't I remember like kind of angsty kids. I remember some like moody sad girl stuff going on, but I feel like I didn't focus enough on this while I was listening to it, and it just I need to come back to this. So this is getting a reread. Right now, I'm like right in the middle of the road because I felt like there were moments where I was really enjoying the book, and then other ones where I was kind of checked out. And I think I may need to do this as like a physical read, but I kind of yeah, I did this book a disservice. So we're going to come back to this one. So jury's out on this one for me. Off with Her Head was our Patreon pick, and I really did enjoy this. I think it's kind of like a great entry level feminist novel for like a modern person who's trying to get their head around what it's like to exist in the world as a woman in our modern society, but also how that isn't any different really than the last like 3,000 years. It is very surface level, though. Like I said, it doesn't go heavy into anything, but it's a great introduction to a lot of things. Hillary Clinton gets a lot of page time, and I thought those bits were very eye opening. I think that it was very interesting to reframe a lot of things that I saw growing up in the 80s and 90s that I didn't really understand when I was younger. And now, as an adult, and I can look back on it, I can be like, that was really not appropriate for us to have said those things or done those things. And it's interesting with retrospect how you see things differently than when you're in it. I thought it was great. I thought it was a really interesting book. I thought there were some really great stories, particularly around like Greek myths and lots of historical figures. It's sad to see the parallels between then and now. I did DNF Hungry Ghosts very quickly into this book because I just wasn't connecting with this story. I don't know why. I just wasn't connecting with it. I couldn't do it. I was exhausted from Booker. I said no, I'm moving on. I don't need to read all the books. I do have a review for this on the channel as well. So this is on Sun Swallowing by Dakota Warren. Dakota Warren is a YouTuber, booktuber, author, tuber, artist, creative person here on YouTube. This is her first published collection of poetry. It also has some mixed media in there, and I was surprised by how much I didn't hate this. That's how I'm going to say that. You can go watch the review if you would like. And let me know if you want like more booktuber books, because there are some other people who have written books or novellas, and I would be happy to just not torture myself, be pleasantly surprised, depending on the person or the book, make a little series where I review those kinds of things. I am surprised that this didn't make the short list, but The House of Doors was really good. I think I need to read Somerset Maugham. I'm never going to get that right. I think I need to read his works and maybe come back to The House of Doors, because I feel like then maybe I would have a different relationship with the book. But I did really enjoy this. I thought it was beautifully written. I just thought it was a very safe pick, but I thought they would go safe. If you want a very interesting historical fiction, I would read The House of Doors. I thought this was great. I did read one little. Oh no, this is also translated. I think this is translated from the French, and I believe the author and illustrator and everybody, I think they're like Canadian. French Canadian. This is Jane the Fox and Me, and it's kind of it's a story of this young girl, and she is kind of like bullied by the popular girls. She was once in the in crowd, and then she kind of feels she's grappling with her weight. She's grappling with like being a little bit, she's not as like wealthy as her other friends. Think of that age where everyone starts to divide. So she's like right there, and she's just kind of grappling with all of that. And she finds Jane Eyre, and she's reading Jane Eyre, and she sort of finds sort of solace and through reading Jane Eyre. And I love Jane Eyre, and this was a sweet story about her and this fox that she finds, and sort of finding community and a way to love herself. And I just love anything that promotes Jane Eyre. So this was good. I did enjoy this. And it does deal with some darker things that we all kind of grapple with. So yeah, I think it's a lovely book, especially if you have somebody like kind of in that age group who feels um, like they're struggling with all those things you struggle with when you're like an adolescent and your body is changing and people are starting to stratify out into their little like cliques and things, and you start to feel lost. And yeah, this was really nice. Also, just read Jane Eyre. And then finally, I reread Greek Lessons by Han Kang because I needed to reread it to talk about it on the podcast. We did a live about it. And I'm really glad that I reread this. This time I listened to it. The first time I read it, like in an ebook as an early ARC. And I'm really glad that I listened to it and I got a different perspective because it really helped me to hear the different voices, quite literally in the audiobook, but to my biggest complaint on the first read was that the two characters didn't feel distinct enough for me. But on reread and or re-listen, they were very distinct, and it helped me to connect better with the story and to get more out of it. I still think this is like this really quiet book that's written just exquisitely because it's Han Kang, and it's worth a read, but it's not my favorite Han Kang. It could I feel like she can do even more, but I think it's still Han Kang. Like you're going to get something out of it. It's going to be exquisite, and you're still going to think about it like every so often as you go through like your life. So it's definitely a wonderful book. So we are missing one thing from this. I think you probably noticed that there was one missing, and that one missing was I read For Pearl by Sean Hughes. That book is based on a very, very old poem, and I did read that poem. So in Storygraph, it does separate that poem out as its own little book, but I don't really think that that's a book. So it's not in my bookly. So there is a discrepancy between Storygraph and bookly. So yeah, that's everything I read, and I'm sorry if this is kind of like a little bit discombobulated this month for this wrap up. I am very worn out from work, but I'm also very worn out because I've been quite sick. I've been under the weather for a little while, and it's not COVID, but I almost feel like I have COVID fog from it, whatever sickness I got. And it's definitely affecting the recall, and it's definitely affecting like my ability to focus and read. I'm not reading as much in September, and I also just think I'm kind of burnt out from Booker. I did finally finish the long list. I had like 2 or 3 more to go. I finished them in the beginning of September. And so I'm very tired. I do have a lot of things planned. I have set up all this organization for myself and it's going so well. I have so many things planned for the channel and videos I want to film, but I've been like a dead man walking. So things are coming. I will get them out to you, and hopefully you enjoy them. If you ever have anything you want me to review, or if you have suggestions on books or recommendations, you can always drop them in the comments or DM me on Instagram. Otherwise, I think I'm going to get myself a cup of coffee because I still have many more hours to stay up tonight. And I may watch some Bridgerton on the treadmill so I can stay awake. Anyway, let me know what you're currently reading. What was one of your favorite books from August? If you've read any of these books, please let me know. And if you've read Brutes, please tell me if it's worth going back to, or if like, did I check out of this book for a reason? Maybe there's a reason I checked out and it's not Booker. It's probably Booker. But anyway, yeah, I'm going to stop rambling. I feel like this is going to be a hot mess and I'm going to hate editing it. Editing Alyssa's going to hate me. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video, whatever it may be, because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want. Bye. So just sit with me, talking to the night until the morning, building chemistry. I don't think I ever wanna go come closer next to me. Trying to find another way to say this, but I think we were meant to be.